Hello everyone, today is the first video in the series where I'll be teaching you how to make a game in Unity. So we're just going to get started now, and what I'm going to first do is open up Google Chrome or whatever web browser I'm using, and I'm going to go to unity.com/download. And then I'm going to click download here, big blue button, and then I'm going to download for Windows or whatever operating system you have. Click download for Windows, and then just run through the installer and open it up. Once you're done, you can just open up Unity Hub by searching it up on your computer. And what you're going to want to do, it should look like this. What you're going to do is click this little preferences button here, and you're going to go to licenses and make sure you have a personal license. If you don't, click add, click get a free personal license, and then click agree and get a free personal edition license. Once you're done with that, just make sure you have an account and you're all signed up and you're ready to go. I'm going to go over here to installs. If you don't have an editor, click install editor. Make sure you install LTS recommended version, the newest one. Click install. In the modules, make sure you have Android build support, iOS build support, Linux build support, another Linux build support, Mac build support, Universal Windows Platform build support, WebGL build support, Windows build support, and Windows dedicated server build support. Seems like a lot, but you're going to need all of these if you want to be able to build to all platforms, so it's necessary. Just run through that, and it might take a while. It definitely took me a couple of hours last time to download it. We're going to go to projects, and this is where all your games are. I'm going to click new project, and you see all these different templates here. I'm going to run through each one real quick. 2D is a 2D game, and 3D is a 3D game. Not much difference there. The main thing that's different is the graphics. Universal 3D also stands for URP. High Definition 3D also stands for HDRP. Universal 2D is still URP. And then you have 3D built-in and 2D built-in. 3D built-in and 2D built-in are something you probably never use. This is if you want to build your own render pipeline, and most people don't use that, but if you get more advanced, you may use that. In this tutorial, we're going to be using Universal 3D. So I'm going to click it here, and I'm going to enter a project name. And then I'm going to enter a location for it. Oh, I already have a name for that. _1. And I have a location on my D drive here, build projects, and that's where I'm going to store it. And you don't have to worry about any of the other settings here, and just click create project when you're ready. This may take you a couple minutes. It took me 8 minutes last time, I think. And I'll see you guys when it's done creating. Okay, I've loaded in, and this is the Unity editor. It may look kind of bland now, so I'm just going to change a few things to make it look better. Down here you have the project and console tabs. If you don't see them, go to window, and then general, and then just open it up here. If you don't see it in general, just look through all of these, and it'll kind of correspond to whatever you're doing. Project, I'll probably be in general. Don't see it there, so you can just also go to panels, you can close it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the project panel, I'm going to drag it over here to the side, and the same with the console. What then I'm going to do is go to the project, and I'm going to click these three dots here and click one column layout, because I feel like that looks better, and it also just helps you organize stuff better and just be able to look through it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain every single part in here and how to move it around. If you hold down right mouse button, you can pan around and look around. To move, hold the right mouse button and use WASD. If you just click with a middle mouse button, hold it down, you'll be able to like look around in a set area. This is good if you're looking around like a wall or something, but you mostly would want to move it around. Okay, Unity is component based. This means everything right here is made out of components. Over here is a hierarchy, and these are every single game object inside your scene. You can think of a scene as a level, and we're in a level right now. We can call this level 0. And this holds just some basic objects that Unity created for us. I'm going to go over to the main camera here. And we see it has 1, 2, 3, 4 components on it. These were already added for us, and I'm going to explain each one real quick. The transform is what holds the position, rotation, and scale. Camera is a camera component, and it's what projects the camera view to the game. Right now, you can see we're in the scene view. If I click game, I get this like blue looking skybox, and it's just like some gray looking ground. Can't really tell what's happening. That's because it's just projecting from here and there's nothing in sight, so it just looks endless. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to press E to grab my rotation tool, and I'm going to drag this red sphere right here, and I'm going to drag it up. You see in the corner here, I have a little game view window. You see it changes every time I rotate it. So this shows that this is projecting the camera view to the game. We'll go back to the game, it's still here. That's perfect. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete everything. So now we get this weird looking nighttime-ish sky. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty. This is something that only has a transform component, and you cannot ever get rid of the transform component. It's on every single game object. So don't ever try to remove it. You can't, and you won't be able to. So what I'm going to do is we see this is at a kind of weird position. Negative 0.407. I'm going to right click on the transform header and click reset, and this just resets all the values on it. That's really useful if you mess everything up like that. Just click reset on it. It takes it back to 0, 0, which is right here. I'm going to press F2 on this while selecting over it. I'm going to name it directional light. Now we could just right click in the hierarchy and go to light, directional light, and now make one. But I'm going to show you that you can make it yourself. Directional light, well, it takes in a light component. So I'm going to type in light when I clicked add component. And you see it added a light component. It still doesn't look correct. I'm going to open up general and set the type to directional. Still doesn't look correct. Over here on the side, you have the rotate tool, the move tool, the view tool, the scale tool, the transform tool or the rect tool. Well, I guess this one's the transform tool. You probably only ever use the move, rotate, and scale. And you only use the rect tool if you're making a 2D game, probably. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the rotate tool, and you can switch through these by pressing W, E, R, T, Y, and Q. I'm going to press E, and I'm going to grab this little sphere right here, and I'm going to drag it so this little cylinder in the middle is facing down like that. Make sure it's not facing up like this. Make sure it's facing down, and that will start lighting up our scene with the sun. Right there. See if I move this around? The sun moves around too. So I'm just going to project it down, and that looks great. Here, inside the light component, you can close it and you can open it with this little caret. You have every single property in it. You have shadows, rendering, and everything else. Under shadows, I'm going to set the shadow type to soft shadows to give it some shadows. You can play around with the color, but I like just white color. It's kind of what the sun does. Intensity, we'll just keep it at 1 since we don't have any blocks yet. Won't affect anything. And I'll go over in depth over lighting more later in this tutorial. Next, we need a camera. If you go into game right now, you should get this little warning. No, camera's rendering. That's not good. So I'm going to go back into scene. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to camera. And this will place a camera. I'm going to name it main camera. You see, it's pretty far down there. I want it to be right here. So I'm going to right click on transform and click reset. You see, this one has 4 components. The camera, which is what projects a view. We have the audio listener, which is what listens for audio. You don't need this, but you wouldn't be able to hear anything in your game. And Unity puts this script on it, which just gives it some extra data and helps it run. If we go into the camera, it has all of these properties. We can change the field of view. I go into game real quick. See the field of view? I can actually change the field of view, so it looks pretty weird. The default is 60, and that is what it is in most games. But I like 90, so I'll just go in between and set this to 75. You have perspective and orthographic, and that's change how stuff looks. You can play around with that, but I would always keep it at perspective. And you have some other things. I'm going to turn on post-processing, anti-aliasing, and I think that's all we need for now. I'll close this right here, and we're done. I'm going to create a new object. I'm going to go to volume, global volume, and this will create a new global volume. This is what makes all the post-processing in your scene. I'll reset the transform, and we have something called volume. If you go to profile here, click this little dot, you should see one already created for you. This is in your assets folder. Your assets are down here inside this assets folder. This is where you put all your images and scripts and everything, like materials, and you can right click and click create to see all the things that can be stored in here. I'm gonna go to my global volume. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click profile, select that right here, and click sample scene profile. If you do not see this and you do not see any of them, just click new here. So I'll just click this one here since it's already created. And now we get some more properties. We have vignette, balloon, and tone mapping. On tone mapping, I'm gonna set the mode to aces. Balloon, I'm gonna set the intensity up maybe just a bit. Threshold down maybe just a smudge. And the vignette is what puts this little border around your screen. I'm gonna go into game real quick. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom out, and instead of free aspect, I'm just gonna do something like full HD. And I think we can actually go QHD for mine. Just make sure your scale is the lowest it can be. And now you see if we turn up the intensity, we get vignette. So this is what looks really good in like maybe horror games or something. So I just want a bit so it's not too annoying. Change down the smoothness just a bit. Get like a hardness effect. And I think that's good. If you click add over right here, you get every single post-processing thing. Chromatic aberration, which is what adds rainbow things to the corner of your screen. Like it just like an old camera screen, I guess you could say. Kind of hard to see right now since you don't have any objects. So I'll just right click and remove it. And we can go through and look at all of them. I'm gonna add some motion blur. I click all to turn on these settings here so they're enabled. I'll set the quality to medium and intensity to, let's say, 0.2. You can play around with these to make it look as you want. And I think that's all we need for now. Maybe some lens distortion will make it look pretty cool. I'll click. I only need the intensity in this one. And this one you gotta be careful with. This is like a fish-eyed effect. I'm gonna set this one to maybe 0.1. This one's very dangerous because it could look really bad. Just be careful with it. And I'll add chromatic aberration back. And turn it up just a bit. 0.05 may be good. Okay, it looks perfect. Now we're gonna get started with building a map real quick. We're gonna go to Window, Package Manager. Right here in Packages in Project, we're gonna click Unity Registry. I'm then gonna search up Pro, and you'll see all of these things pop up. Find the one that says Pro Builder and click Install. This may take a while, so I'll see you guys when it's done installing. Okay, Pro Builder is done installing. I'm gonna click this little plus here. Add package from get URL, and I'm gonna type in tom.unity.pro and then grids. All one word here, pro grids. I'm just gonna hit enter or click add, and it's gonna start installing. So I'll wait for you guys until this one's done installing. Okay, it's done installing, and that's everything we need for now. So I'll just close out of this. You see, there's this little blue window here, but we can't click on it right now. It's kind of hidden. I'm gonna grab this over here and just drag it over. And on the third button down, I'm gonna turn on the toggle snapping. And just make sure this snap increment is something like 0.25. I'm then gonna go to Tools, Pro Builder Window. And you'll get this little window over here. And I'm gonna click New Shape. Drag it up a little bit more. And I'm gonna make sure I click Cube. I'm then just gonna find a little area like this. I'm just gonna drag it out like this by holding down my mouse button, let go, and then pull it up a bit, like that. Now we're gonna want a scale for a player. I'm gonna go to 3D objects, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to cylinder. I'm gonna reset the transform, bring it up a bit, and this platform looks a little bit too small now. So we're gonna click this fourth button here to get face selection. I'll click on this side here. And I'm just gonna pull it out until it looks good. Say there. And we'll come over here. And we'll pull it out a little bit more. It's looking perfect. I kinda want some walls now. I'm gonna click new shape. And I'm just gonna drag it out a bit. I'm gonna pull it up. And now we have some walls. We'll go back to face selection mode. I'm just gonna pull it all the way here. And click F to go towards it. I'm gonna hold shift and drag it out, and then you should get this little separate yellow part here. And hold shift again while holding shift, drag out to create the wall. Shift is called extruding, and it makes a new face separate from each other, and that's perfect for making walls. So there we go. I'm just gonna start the little corner right now. Maybe I'll grab this little dot right here and we'll pull it up a bit without holding shift. There, looks perfect. Now I kind of want to change the directional light now, so I'm going to press F to find it right here. Go to rotation mode. I'm just going to rotate it somewhere like, let's say that. Okay, now we're going to get started with some scripting. First, I'm going to name this part here ground, and this part here the walls. And I'm going to do is I'm going to click both of them by holding shift and click create empty parent. I'm going to name this scene. So this is called a game object. I've already showed you it has transforming components, but there's these buttons up here. You can tag stuff so it has like certain only identifiable stuff, so it's kind of like a name for it. So if you only wanted the player to have a tag, you give it a player tag so it's like different from everything else. And you have a layer, and this just separates stuff into different layers. So you could have like a ground layer, maybe a walls layer, who knows. There's something called static. If you have something that's not going to move in your game, click static. So I'll click static and yes, change children. And then right here, we have this little like checkbox right here. This is if the game object is active or not. This basically enables and disables it. Since this is disabled now, it's not going to show up. So we're just going to keep it enabled for now. I'm going to go over to the ground here. And I'm going to click on layer. And I'm going to click add layer. And I'll make a new layer called ground. I'll go back to the ground and add this layer on here. Perfect. Now we're going to create some materials. I'm going to go over to my assets tab. I'm going to right click. I'm going to create a folder. I've already created a folder here. And I'm just going to press F2 on it to name it materials. And then I'm opening it up. And I already have some materials here, so I'll just delete them for now. And inside your folder, materials folder, go to create and material. And name this one ground. I'm gonna press Ctrl D on it to make another one and name it walls. This is a material. This applies images, colors, textures. Just makes stuff look nice. Basically textures. I'm gonna put the ground on ground and the walls on walls. And I'll keep the ground a nice dark color. I'm gonna click on ground over here. I'm gonna go over here to the color selection. The base map is basically the color. I'll just bring it down to, let's say, black. Change the smoothness down a bit. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna select both of them with shift, and I want to apply texture to them. So when you download ProGrid, you already automatically get a texture, and you want to click this here so you can like see all the new ones. This unhides all the hidden ones. Just search up grid and find one called grid box default. Look at that. That looks kind of cool. Maybe like a FPS game or something. I'm not going to create the player object. I'm going to right click, put a 3D object, and I'm going to select, let's do capsule. I'm going to reset the transform, and I'm just going to bring him to the middle. Then on the scale on the Y, I'll change him to about 1.5. I'm then going to grab my camera, and I'm just going to position my scene to somewhere like right here. Perfect. I'm going to right click on the camera and click align with view. See, that we get this cool looking, I don't know, view of our scene. So I'm actually going to change the FOV in a little. I don't like 75 anymore. I think that looks good. We can actually now come out game view, drag it a little closer maybe. And there we go. So I'll show you what chromatic aberration is now. If I can actually zoom into it. You see right here, there's just red and blue lines. It shifts the colors around. As you can see here, it shifts colors around. So of course you don't want too much of those that look weird. So I'm just going to do just a hint. Maybe even that's a little bit too much. Looks good. Lens distortion, I'll keep it at 0.1. And I'll go back to my capsule. I'm going to name this player. And I'm actually going to click create empty parent. And basically, you can parent stuff inside of each other. A parent is basically like an object that holds it. Think of it as real life children and parent. The player is the child of the game object, and the game object is the parent of the player. Now, when I move the parent, child follows wherever it is. So I'm just gonna name this player one. I'll just name this one player model. Okay, it's looking good. Let's hit play real quick by clicking this button up the top. You'll see that nothing happens. There's no gravity, there's no physics. I don't see anything. That's because we haven't added physics to this yet. What I'm gonna do is go over to my player. I'm gonna click on the parent player. And I'm gonna add a component. And let's add a rigid body. A rigid body is what adds physics to your game. There's a 2D and a 3D one. It doesn't say 3D though. If you're making a 2D game, you'd use rigid body 2D. Since we're making a 3D game, I'm gonna use rigid body. I'm gonna click it. And now, if we hit play, you'll see that the object does fall, and that's pretty cool. So one thing that's better practice to do is I'm actually gonna move the rigid body onto the player model. Player model. Let me see. Rigid body. That's what it's called. Okay. There's a problem with this though, and I'll show you guys what happens in a second. I'm gonna add another object inside the player, and it's gonna be a cube. I'm gonna move it over here, and you're thinking, yay, now I have physics in the parent. Since I have physics in the parent, I should move all of them around. You see, only this one moves. That's because the parent doesn't have it, and these are two separate children. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna remove the rigid body from the player model and put it back on the player. Kind of tedious, but it's just to show you what happens. Rigid body. And this time I'm gonna set interpolate to interpolate and collision detection to continuous. This basically means it does more collisions per second. If you're just making something in the background, just do discrete. I'm gonna hit play now. And you'll see they both fall, but they're clamped together. But since we're making a player, we won't have this cube here, so I can just delete it. And I'm actually gonna reset the transform of the player model to make sure it's good. Yep, it's still in the correct position. Go up to back up to 1.5, and we're ready to start coding. I created a new folder inside my assets called scripts. Inside here, I created a new C# script. You can do this by clicking right click, create, and C# script. Just name it player controller, something like that. I'm now gonna open it up, and before you guys open it up, go to edit, preferences, external tools, external script editor, and make sure it says Visual Studio Code or whatever code editor you're using. That's very important. And then just gonna double click it, and it may take a second to open up the first time. Okay, so it's open, and yours guys should look just like this too. So you're creating a class called player controller, and this is the exact same name as our script. And we're inheriting from mono behavior, which gives us all these methods that are really useful. And we have some usings at the top, which I'll go over later in another video. We have to start and update. They kind of say right here what they already do. Start is called once before the first frame update. So when the game starts, this will be called. Update is called once per frame. This could be 60 times per second. So let's say that. Let's say maybe 60 times, maybe 270. Depends. Oh, I have caps lock on. Depends on the user's frame rate. If you're a really slow game, when your frame rate isn't high at all, this will only be called maybe 2 times per second if you have 2 FPS. But that's fine because we're not going to have a game that only runs at 2 FPS. And if you do, with just this, then probably your computer isn't strong enough to handle this. Okay, let's go back into our script editor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create some new variables. You've probably heard of variables before if you've been coding for a while. Here, there's public, private, and serialized field. I'm going to go over these pretty quickly. Public is if you want it to be accessible by other scripts and changeable in the editor. Private is if you don't want it changed by other scripts and if you want it to not be accessible in the editor. Serialized field to private means that you can edit it in the inspector right here, but you cannot change it in other scripts. So for anything that you want to change in inspector, I would always use serialized field. And if you're just making something to store, let's say the velocity of the player, you just make that private. And since I don't need to change it, I don't need to see the velocity of the player, My code is just using it. I don't need to see it. Public is if you want something to be accessed by another script, but we don't have anything that we need to be accessed by another script yet. I'm going to create serialized fields, private, and you've heard the types of variables. You know bool, you probably know integer, you probably know what a float is, maybe a double, also probably know what a string is or an enum, maybe a struct. There's a lot. These are the basic ones, but Unity has their own types. Since this right here is actually a script, this is a type of variable. You see right here, we actually have our player controller is a type of variable. If I type in player controller, it does show up. That's actually pretty cool. But we want to access the rigid body. So since the rigid body is script, and Unity already made it for us, so we don't have to ever look at the code. I can technically just type in rigid body right here. There we go, it pops up. I'm just gonna name this RB. And this is our player's rigid body. That's perfect. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go inside the update and we're gonna get some input. I'm gonna do if input, and this basically holds all of the keyboard input and mouse input and everything else. If input dot get key down, and this detects when the user presses a key. I'm gonna do key code dot dot, and then here's all of the keys. So choose the button that you want to be your jump button. I'm gonna do space. Now we have a simple if statement. What I'm gonna do here is debug.log. User has pressed space. I'll show you guys what this does in a second. And press Ctrl S to save and go back to Unity and wait while it compiles my scripts. Perfect. Now I'm gonna hit play and we're gonna see what happens. So I'm gonna hit space, nothing happens. We look in the console where debug.log will be printing out. Nothing happens in there. That's because we haven't assigned the script to anything. So I'm gonna go over to my player. I'm gonna take my player controller and I'm gonna drag it on. And look at that, we made our own component. You see, we have RB right here. It actually shows the variable, the serialized field variable inside the inspector. So that's great. You can see it's right there. What happens if I make it private? If I go back now, you'll see that it does not show up. So that's why we use serialized field, so that we can edit it in the inspector and make changes whenever we want. So since we're accessing the rigid body, it says we haven't assigned it yet. None. That means it's null. So I'm just going to drag the rigid body over into here. And there we go. We have access to it. And it's under the player. Yep. I'm just going to tag this player real quick. There we go. Make sure this isn't tagged player. Yep. That's fine. And I think that's everything we need for now. I'm then going to hit play. And go over to my console. And when you call debug.log and put a string inside of it, it'll print it out to the console. So if the user presses space, print this to the console. Press space now, you see it is doing it. And you see it has a number right here that says how many times I've done it. If I press it right now, it says 11. And now we're printing stuff. This is really useful if you want to debug stuff. And that's just the perfect thing you want to do. You always want to print stuff no matter what. If you're having an error, I would print out before, just so you can read through your code and find out what's wrong. What I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to make it private. And I'm going to go back. And now you're thinking, how do we access the rigid body? Don't we need everything that we want to access to be public or a serialized field? The answer is no. Instead start, you can actually go RB equals, and remember this means we're assigning something. Get component. My IntelliSense is trying to complete it for me. We're going to do these little like carrots or something. I forgot what they're called. Do rigid body, since that's what we're accessing. Now close it, and then put parentheses and a semicolon. You end a semicolon on every single line. So look at this. I'll explain this. Rigid body variable is equal to get a component. When you call get component, it tries to find the component wherever the script is. So it's saying get component rigid body. So it looks here, goes ding 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 ding, and it finds it. And then it brings it back to the script and it sets RB equal to it. So this is how you get a component. Let's pretend this player controller script was on the player model. When it tried to do RB equals get component, rigid body, it wouldn't be able to, because the script isn't on the same like object as the rigid body. The script has to be on the same object as whatever component you're trying to access we need to use get component. So now we're getting the component. I'm gonna create a new serialized field at the top. And I'm gonna make a float, which is a number, and I'll name it jump power. I'll set this to 50. You always end a float with F. But when you're assigning it like this, oh, rather bad. Jump power, you did not like assign it like that. You could, but you can just assign it like that. It's just when we set it up and declare it. So now we have jump power. So we actually want to make ourselves jump. I'm gonna delete this line here. And I'm gonna do RB. So now if we press dot, this is dot notation, and we get every single property. So right here on the rigid body, all these properties you see here, you can change inside the code. So let's say we wanted to change the mass to 50 and you click space. Well, I'm gonna do rb.mass, and yeah, it shows up right there. Let's do 50. And I'm gonna save and go back in. And I'm gonna hit play. And you're gonna see now that nothing happened. It still says 1. That's because we have to click space first according to my code. So I'll hit space. And look at that, it changed to 50. So that's how you change properties on different components. If you wanted to change the position, well, you would just make a position, we would just make a private. Transform is the component here. We'll name transform, right? And then to access it, we do transform, and then we want to access the position here. Position, so I'll do dot position. Look at that, we have position. It's not called scale, it's called local scale. And if you want rotation, you can do rotation, and rotation has quaternions, and that's more complicated. But whatever this is actually really useful thing. Whatever script, yeah, let me find it. Whatever the script is, it already has access to the transform automatically. This means we don't need to create a variable to store the transform. The script already stores it for us. So I can actually just do transform dot position, and then we can assign it something. You see, we haven't declared transform anywhere in this program, but Unity automatically declares it for us, and it's basically a constant variable. So that's why you can't do transform equals something. You can't do that. It's not allowed. It is read only. So the constant variable that Unity creates first, that allows us to access the transform of wherever object the script is on. So that's really useful. Sadly, I cannot just do rigid body. I cannot just access it. See, I cannot access it there. Unity only lets you access the transform like that. Okay, now let's get into adding some jumping physics. The rigid body is what handles physics, so it's probably going to be on that. I'm going to do RB to add force, and this is what adds force. Now it says here we need to define the vector 3 of where we want the force to go. Vector 3 is 0, 0, 0, 0, or 3 coordinates. We have the x, the y, and the z. So since this is the y, we probably want to add force on the y, right? And since the y is up, we can just do vector 3 dot up. And vector 3 dot up is the same thing as vector 3 and then 0 is 1 0. It's just a shortened term. So to make it easier to understand when you're starting out, you can actually type in new, because we're creating a new vector 3. You can't just do vector 3, because when you're creating a new object, you have to use the keyword new. So new vector 3, 0, 1, so 0 on the x, 1 on the y, 0 on the z. Perfect. Now I'm going to multiply this by jump power. And since we're multiplying a number like 1 by jump power, it'll be whatever this is, so 50. And these won't be anything at all, because if this is 1, it would go sideways, it would go up in this way. But since we only want to go up, we're just going to do 0 here, so it does not get multiplied by. So you can multiply vectors by numbers. Okay, this is perfect. I'm going to save, and I'm going to go back into Unity. I'm then going to click on the rigid body. I'll just open it up real quick. I'm going to hit play. Importing some assets. Okay, you can see a little bean here spelling. If I click space, you might not see it. If I zoom in close enough there, See, he is jumping. Probably wondering why this is happening. Well, it's clear that either a mass is too much or something like our script, the jump power isn't high enough. Let's set this to 250. There we go. We're jumping a lot higher. Maybe 500 will be high enough. There we go. You see, we have some pretty low gravity. So to fix this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out of it real quick. Stop program. Go to project settings. I'm going to go to physics. And then I'm going to find gravity. Let me find it. Gravity. Negative 9.81. That's a normal gravity on Earth. But Unity sometimes looks weird. So I'm just going to multiply this by 2. I don't know what this is. 9.81 times 2. 9.8 times 2. Around 19.62. So just, let's just do 20. Negative 20. You gotta be careful with this. Don't change this for every game. This is just because we're making a game that doesn't really rely too much on other physics objects. But now, you see if I play, it didn't work. So, when you make a change while you're playing the game, I set it to 5,000 right now. If I click stop, it goes back to 50. Any changes you make while playing the game will not save. You gotta be really careful about that. And one thing I realized, changing gravity probably won't affect too much. Okay, it works. Perfect. So now we have a player that can jump. Problem is, we can jump infinitely. I'll go over this more in the next video, and he's fallen over. Let's go. We'll fix that real quick. Go to your rigid body. Go to constraints, and we're gonna freeze the rotation on the X, which means like this. And then we're also gonna freeze it on the Z, so it can't tilt over like this. We want to allow it on the Y so it can turn. One thing I overlooked there. Now if we hit jump, we will not tip over and fall. If you do want to tip over and fall, sure, go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's all for this video. And make sure to join my Discord server if you want help with anything or just want to talk with other people that like coding in Unity. And also, I'm doing giveaways on there because I'm currently working on a Steam game that I'll be uploading in Steam soon. Just thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.